You're listening to The Big Question by Jessica Kingsley. That's me. And I'm going to be presenting my journey of self-discovery to find out if, by altering my nose, will I actually alter or change my life. But I'm also going to be looking at the broader picture. I want us to delve into society's obsession with beauty standards. Society's obsession on the street, on our TVs, on our screens, and the pressure we put on ourselves. In a world, especially a Western world, why do we boast about how diversified we are when it comes to looks, when actually we're no more further than we ever were, and there's even greater pressure than ever to conform to trends and perfect beauty standards? I believe that my big nose is holding me back from my big dream of becoming a TV and screen actress. I want to find out if talking to other people about their looks and about the industry will actually help me to decide whether or not I should have a nose job. I'm Jessica Kingsley, and I've just turned 45. And maybe this is a midlife crisis, but all my life I have wanted a nose job. Well, I say all my life, we'll go back to the beginning. But from around being a teenager, it was my thing. I hated my nose. But why now? Well, this is the big question. Why now, suddenly at 45, have I decided to do something about it? So picture this. I'm sat maybe at a dinner party or in a bar, in a pub, and I'm talking to someone new or a group of friends or someone I don't know very well, and I'm introduced to someone, for example. And they look at me and they say, "Do you know who you remind me of?" My heart starts to race because I know what's coming and I never know quite what to say in return. "No, who?" I say, like I don't know what they're going to say. And then they usually say, "Barbara Streisand," or "Sarah Jessica Parker." And then they usually follow it with, "Oh, but I mean it as a compliment. I think they're really beautiful." So this is a comment I have heard most of my adult life. And I'm sure it is a compliment for many people. I know that many people think Barbara Streisand and Sarah Jessica Parker are beautiful, but the fact that people have to follow it up with just some reassurance of saying that's a compliment makes me think, why? Why can't people just say, "You're beautiful. You've got a great nose. You look like Barbara Streisand." Or why do they feel they need to say anything? But it's stuck. It's one of the seeds that has stuck in my head and grown over the years. But let me take you back, because like I said, this didn't happen overnight. I was born in the 1980s, a pretty awesome time to be born, if you ask me. The age where women were allowed to be loud, louder than men, and men could wear makeup and frilly collars. It was just a great time of freedom expression for both men and women, girls and boys. It was a time when VHS was on repeat. That was your YouTube and your Netflix, or a trip down to Blockbuster Videos. It was a time when all you needed was your personal stereo, your Walkman or your Discman, and a time when you would ride on your BMX bike without a care in the world, or play with your best friend in her bedroom, dancing to Madonna with your hairbrushes. No mobile phones, no selfies, no social media, no video games. Can you imagine? No, you probably can't. But for those who were born before the millennium, it was a great time of freedom. My childhood was pretty happy. I came from a middle-class suburban family. I'm the youngest of four daughters, and as a family of six, we were pretty normal. Well, apart from the fact that we were Jewish. And around Christmas time, Santa would usually fly over our house. But that was fine because all was made up over Hanukkah when we would receive 8 days of gifts. Everything felt perfect until I hit puberty, like most girls or like most kids. Suddenly, I started to question things. And then I guess my little button nose began to grow longer and longer, and I just wasn't so cute anymore. Suddenly, my red hair became really thick and frizzy, and I needed glasses and braces. And no, puberty was not a great time for me. But despite all this, I actually had a lot of confidence growing up. I loved to sing and dance and act, and I had loads of friends. In fact, it was never any of my non-Jewish friends who pointed out my nose. But the people who did were the people closest to me. I think I was maybe about 12 when my dear mother looked at me and said, "You know what, Jessica? Maybe you should have that nose job that I never had." Well, that was something different. I hadn't ever really thought about my nose until she'd said it. Well, not like that, not to have a nose job. And then I remember another time, my lovely dad, who I have to say here, pretty much did admit that he loved his Irish setters, his dogs, more than his four daughters at times, which I know is not totally true because I know he loved us dearly. But there were times when I would overhear him say to his friends, "I love my Irish setter almost as much as I love my Jessica. In fact, they look very similar. They both have silky red hair and long noses." And then there were my sisters, normal sibling banter. I mean, they used to smack my head, calling me spam. They'd even do awful things, which were very 80s. And obviously, you'd be cancelled for saying this now, but they'd pat my belly and call me Ethiopian child. Okay, we don't do that now, but between siblings and banter, that is the type of thing that went on. Oh, and then, yeah, yeah, of course, they'd point out my nose to me. But then I would go up to my room and I'd start to look at my nose from all angles, hold my head high, see if I could push it one way, angle it in a certain way, get rid of the bump, make it smaller. And then I guess I realized it was different from other people's noses. Well, from the noses I was seeing on TV or the noses I was seeing in the street. I don't know. I guess I just saw it as different, but not different in a good way. Different, longer, bumpier, witchier, uglier. Then my sister dropped a classic line. "You know, considering your nose is so big, you're quite pretty." By then, the seed had already been firmly planted in my head, and I was determined that when I was older and had enough money, I would get that nose job. But life doesn't always work that way. Things don't pan out the way you imagine. I mean, there's life and there's earning a living and starting a family and meeting the man of your dreams and then realizing you need to buy a house and provide for your children and your family. And who has a spare 15, 20 grand to change their nose? But let's go back a little bit again. In my teenage years, I fancied boys. And I will admit, I never once had a boy turn around to me and say, "I don't fancy you because of your nose." In fact, I was quite lucky. The boys I fancied tend to fancy me back. And I had some amazing, great relationships and boyfriends and early loves. And in fact, the only ones who ever really did talk about my nose were the ones who were very close to me and close to my heart. And they never made me feel bad about it. It wasn't a negative thing to them. If anything, it was one of the reasons they fell for me, telling me I looked different or something mysterious about me. It was usually women, or should I say girls, that commented on my nose. But like I said, never my non-Jewish friends. It was often my Jewish friends, places like summer camp, where there were always the cliquey girls, the pretty girls, the girls that wore the right labels, had the right brands, had the right hair, which I'll point out was usually the straightened Jennifer Aniston friend's hair. And they were the ones who would go, "Oh, Jess, do you worry about your nose? Or Jess, you're so pale. Or your knees are really knobbly. Or your nose is really bumpy and your ears are really big." And maybe it was just the people I hung around with, but I wondered, why did this group of people want to point out my insecurities, my biggest insecurities, my biggest features, my biggest insecurities? I don't know. I don't know where that came from, but all it did was to reaffirm the things that I hated about myself. I think somewhere along the line, I subconsciously internalized this. And I started to look at men who were very much the opposite of me, opposite of what I felt I looked like, and the opposite of where I came from. And as a result, I never fancied Jewish men. I liked guys who looked cute, like from Britpop bands like Damon Albarn. And I like blonde guys. I like guys with blue eyes and cute little noses. Despite my mum and dad's best efforts, I never fancied the Jewish doctors or Jewish lawyers they brought home for dinner. And now, in my 40s, I am happily married to a non-Jewish guy who absolutely adores my nose and two wonderful boys who absolutely adore their mum and tell me I'm beautiful and pretty. Yet why now? Why now I'm 45 do I want to go ahead and have this nose job? I guess there's a few things that have happened that have made me decide to do it. Number one, I'm more secure. I have a successful business and I do have some disposable income. So financially, I could go ahead and actually get the nose job done. Not easily, may I stress, it's a lot of money. Secondly, for the first time in my life, I feel like I'm not looking after anybody. Obviously, I have two children, but I feel like they're quite settled. And yes, of course, they need me as a mum, but they don't need me physically every second of the day. And third, well, going back to second, it's not just my children who don't need me. I should probably add that my parents died this year. Both of them died within 6 months of each other. And perhaps for the first time in my life, I don't feel I need to please them anymore. Maybe them dying, it's also taken away that guilt of me wanting to change my nose. I did actually discuss it with my mum before she died, and she said to me, whatever I wanted to do, she'd be happy and support me. And I know that's true. I know that if they were still alive and I have the no had the nose job, I know that they would always give me support because it's something they always did. But with their death, I guess it's brought me some feeling of freedom that I don't have to think about what they're thinking about me and I don't have to look after them or worry about them. But I think one of the biggest reasons for me to want to do it is my career. Like I said, my business is successful, it's doing well, but my career as an actress is stuck. I feel I get to an audition, I do really well with acting, and I even get callbacks and heavy pencils where the director's saying, we want to work with you, Jess. We think you're great. And then I get that response that so many actors hear. I'm sorry, the brand's gone a different way. But what is that way? And the only thing I keep coming back to, it must be my nose. What else could be wrong with me? And I know that it could be a multitude of reasons, but that for me is the thing I'm hung up on. And that's why I decided to do this podcast, because I want to explore this. I want to explore that if I were to go ahead and have the nose job, would it really change my luck? Would I suddenly be a successful actress overnight? I'm sure that wouldn't happen, but it might make me get more jobs or the job. So earlier this year, I decided to go and see a very famous nose surgeon, a rhinoplastician, someone who could help me change my nose. There I was sat, opposite the man that could alter my nose and my life. And then he said to me, why now? Well, why now? As I said before, there were a multitude of reasons. But as I sat opposite him, considering that I'm about to give this man 15,000 to maybe 20,000 pounds of my hard-earned money, why now? And I started to doubt myself. And then when he began to flick through his personal catalogue of perfect noses, I started to doubt him. There I was confronted with a morph of my face and my nose, a profile that I had longed for, a morph that he had done on a computer to tell me what my nose would like if I went ahead and had surgery with him. And honestly, when I looked at my profile and my face, I was disgusted. It didn't look like me. And I said that. I said to him, "It doesn't look like me." And he said, "But I thought you didn't want to look like you." And then I suddenly began to panic. And I thought, well, I do want to look like me. I just want to look like me, but with a smaller nose. He said, "But you need to have this nose." I was like, "What? Why do I need to have this nose?" Because this is the perfect nose. Perfect nose. What does that even mean? I said to him, "I like the noses of Gillian Anderson or Kristen Scott Thomas, people whose noses have character, but not too much character." Well, that just hit him blank because he didn't even know who I was talking about. But as I began to explain to him what I meant, I started to defend my decision not to have a nose job. And then I think he thought I was just wasting his time. And I don't think he could be quick enough to get me out that door. Of course, he did send me up to the finance department first to work out when we could book in a surgery and when they could take a deposit. At which point I said I wasn't ready. And then when I came home, I thought, why am I not ready? If it's why now, why not now? And why wait? But why not do it? There were too many questions. They were going round and round in my head. And I thought the best way I could figure out whether I really want this nose job is to look into all the reasons and questions of why. Why should I have a nose job? Who am I doing it for? Am I doing it for myself? Am I doing it for my career? Am I doing it for other people out there to show them that, yes, you can have your nose job and it will change your life? Or what if I did? What if I had the nose job and I hated it? I hated it like he showed me that picture and I went, that's not me. I want to be me. I'm proud of me, but I don't think I'm ready. So that's why I decided to write this podcast. It is a personal journey of self-discovery, but it's also going to be a deeper journey, a journey into finding out what society really thinks of diverse looks. And I'm not talking about the diversity we're fed. I'm not talking about the different shades of a Benetton advert. I'm talking about certain characteristics of a person that stops them being a main character. Do you really see in Hollywood or on any type of TV series where the main character has an unusual feature, be it a big nose, a big mouth, a big tummy, or something that's not quite balanced or perfect or symmetrical? I'm going to be talking to lots of people during this podcast. People from beauty professionals, aestheticians, surgeons, but also people in the broader spectrum. So people who work in the industry, such as casting directors, agents, directors, TV presenters. I'm also going to look at people who have found success, success in their own right, who maybe considered surgery at one point or changing themselves at one point, but when they found success, they decided it wasn't worth it. So I really hope that you stay with me on this journey of self-discovery and find out if by the end of it, I do go ahead and have the nose job. And who knows, maybe it will change my life. Maybe by changing my big nose will make my big dream come true. I hope that you can listen to this story and perhaps you can input as well. I would love to hear your story. I'm looking for people who have changed their image, changed their nose. I want to hear your story to help me tell the rest of my story. Thank you for listening to The Big Question by me, Jessica Kingsley. I've written and presented this podcast, and I really hope that you enjoy it. And if you do, tell your friends, get them to listen too, and follow me on Instagram and Facebook and find out if I get to answer the big question. Thank you.